Welcome to the Times of Israel's What Matters Now. I'm your host, Amanda Borschel-Dan. This week here with comedian Liz Glazer. Liz, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much, Amanda, for having me.
It is such a pleasure. And as I was just saying to you off mic, usually this podcast, What Matters Now, is a weekly dive into one issue affecting Israel and the Jewish world right now. But this week we're doing something a little different. And Liz, you are coming to Israel very shortly for the best tour of the year. Definitely, we all await this tour. So, can you just, first of all, before we dive into, well, you, tell us about this tour and why you're coming here?
Sure. Well, before I do that, Amanda, again, thank you for having me. And I love that you're prefacing that despite the fact that this podcast is called What Matters Now, we're doing something a little different this week. We're going to talk about what doesn't matter now.
Also
Something,
important, though.
yeah, totally. Can we invite you on this podcast about significant things to talk about anything insignificant, just like the most trivial, the most boring, like not boring. We're not going to
Not
be
boring,
boring.
definitely not
We're
boring.
literally not, honestly, the opposite of boring. But yeah, I'm very excited. So again, thank you for having me. And I am coming as part of the Comedy for Koby tour. I'm super excited. I've known about the tour for a long time. And yeah, so we arrive in a couple of weeks, or I guess as of the time of this podcast coming out, like pretty shortly, just in a few days. So it's really exciting. I have a lot of family in Israel, and my father, who's since unfortunately passed, but his whole family. So I'm Jewish, and my wife is a rabbi, and what do you call it? My father was of Latvian descent. And so he came over with his whole family, which at the time was his sister and his parents from Riga to Haifa. And his whole family, so his parents are no longer alive, but his sister, her husband, their kids' kids are all there. And I've gone to Israel, a few times over the course of my life to see them. And also, just to be in Israel, which is an important thing and value for me. And it's a real homecoming for me because my dad's family is there, but also because it's Israel. So I couldn't be more excited. My whole family is very excited. My daughter, despite the fact my daughter's 2 years old, and despite the fact that she doesn't know, if you ask her, where are we going? She's like, Israel. How are we getting that big airplane? And so we're all very, very excited.
That's really wonderful to hear, and we're going to get into your personal life even
Yeah,
more than we just did, everything
sure.
like this, after the break.
Over 2,000 years ago, the Hanukkah flame burned against all odds, a symbol of resilience and hope that still shines brightly today. Now, Israel once again turns to light, not just to remember, but to protect and rebuild. As the country rises from 2 years of war, the Technion's brightest minds are leading the way, revitalizing the economy, strengthening national security, and shaping a future full of promise. This Hanukkah, we honor the Technion minds who bring light to the darkness, in our labs, on our front lines, and in our hearts. May the light of innovation illuminate every corner of Israel, heralding a new era of strength and renewal.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with Liz Glazer. Now, Liz, you are very out and loud about both being gay and Jewish. And so I have to ask you right now, in this post October 7th world, which of these identities is a little more tricky for you, if they are at all?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't found them to be that tricky, for the most part. That said, I have in certain situations, like, I think honestly among Jews, like among Jewish audiences, because there is an assumption based on my inhabiting those circles specifically that my political beliefs are, different from what they are. And so, I love Israel. I've always loved Israel. And I also like I, I don't I don't like necessarily announce, hey, here's how I voted, for example, at the beginning of a set or something like that. And I'm not a political comedian. I have a joke that has gone viral, that I started talking about right after October 7th. And so for a time, that I think kind of carried me in terms of the way people like sussed out my political beliefs because, despite the fact that it's not a political joke, because it's not a political joke, it's sort of signaled to some people, oh, okay, so she's probably pro-Israel, which was never a secret for me. Like if you asked me, I'd be like, yeah, of course I believe Israel needs to exist. It's literally the reason that I exist. And so, um, yeah, but I think since then, so I guess like even sometimes if I say the joke, depending on, the crowd, uh there's this assumption that like, oh, well, you're a queer Jew, you're saying your wife is a rabbi, that means that you must, be protesting on the weekends in parks in New York. And uh, I guess, like, I don't know. I don't know exactly. I mean, I have thoughts about like what to do, in terms of my own strategy, just to kind of signal a little bit that. Um, but yeah, like it is a weird time in that way because like some saying something like, I believe in the rights of all people, which I do, but also Israelis do, and also people who have compassion and empathy do. And I think it's like an interesting time because my thing is like, uh, whatever's going on politically, ever literally, or whatever's going on that matters now, I would say in general, nobody is texting me about it directly. In fact, like I would be the last person on anyone's list that anyone of any importance would be talking about in terms of like, listen, we have to make a decision about what matters now. It's like, who not to call? Liz Glazer. And so because of that, I really have just been like, okay, like why would anyone think that I know anything? Because I don't know anything, which to me is like the most Jewish way of thinking about a problem, right? Like just the honesty, intellectual honesty to be like, and I am totally unsure and totally don't know. I don't know. And comedically, that's always been from where I've come perspective wise. Because like I used to have this job, I used to be a law professor. And so there was this air of like kind of pretending I knew or being the person in the room who was allegedly supposed to know. And to me, people talk about sometimes, and I'm happy to elaborate because I retired from that position. This is many years ago at this point to do comedy. And one of the big things that I retired from was any expertise or pretending that I have any expertise. And to me, that's a huge relief because I never did. And I always was pretending I did. And so now, you know, first of all, I mean, if somebody's going to assume that I believe a certain thing because of how I appear, okay, that makes sense to me that I have to address it in the same way that, and I've like toyed around with this for in some sense years because like I sometimes perform for Orthodox crowds and sometimes they don't want to, and I've been told this by producers, like they don't want to talk about, they don't want you to talk about like being gay or something. And I'm like, that's fine. But are they blind? Because to me, and if they are, great. If I performed for a very Orthodox, very seeing, vision impaired audience, then I wouldn't have to address it. But as far as I'm concerned, I appear a certain way, and if the moment of me saying I'm gay and a joke about that in one way or another, right? And I have, many of them, didn't get a huge laugh in the room, I would stop mentioning it at all because I would then take the note that it doesn't need to be mentioned, because if it doesn't get that huge laugh, it doesn't break the big tension of the whole room wondering, right? Oh, but if I started just like not saying anything about it, I mean, I guess if I was saying something totally different, but like even in situations where, and I could think of two particularly, where I've had like sets that weren't about that, right? And then I'll post something online or I'll start the set talking about something totally different. People will say something. Like I'll be talking about a car, and I don't know if this joke translates to Israel, but like in America, a Subaru is like a very gay car. Okay. And so I had a joke that it was for like it was like kind of Christian leaning, not the joke, but the platform on which this joke came out. And I was literally talking about how I miss car keys, like regular car keys. Um, and whatever. And in the comments on this joke about a car, people were like, "Is it a Subaru? Oh yeah, she misses the keys," or whatever. And I was like, oh, literally, this was me trying to make an entirely clean set, devoid of any innuendo about like anything, nothing about sex, nothing about gay or straight or whatever. And people are like, but you gotta be gay, right? And so what's interesting to me is I'm like, okay, like I'm not saying I have to talk about it, but like if you're going to be thinking these things, then it's my job as the comedian to address the thing that's going to be thought in the room. And so similarly, I'm coming to Israel. I am how I am. I look how I look. My life is what it is. There are going to be assumptions about what that means for me in terms of my attitudes about Israel. And so to the extent that I'm in front of people in Israel who are like, wait, does she not believe that we have the right to exist? God forbid, of course I do. I love that you exist. You're the reason that I exist. And, to take away the selfishness of it, it's just, of course, I believe that. Of course, I believe that Israel is amazing. I'm so excited to go. So that's, I guess, like in answering your question, those are my thoughts. And I'm always very like Jewish, which I don't know that that's hard. I wouldn't say that that's hard. For me, something that I think about a lot because I survived essentially because of grandparents who hid. So they were in camps, but like especially on my mother's side, my grandfather on my mother's side was an electrician. Apparently was like the only electrician where they were in Poland who could fix some radio tower. And apparently Nazis were like searching for him specifically. And my grandmother appeared very not Jewish looking. And so she was able to like walk the streets of Poland as though she was not Jewish, finding hiding spots for my grandfather and herself. And that was ultimately how they survived. My grandparents on my father's side, I know, I think were in work camps. Of course, they survived, but I think there was like a lot of hiding on both sides. And so I grew up with this mentality of like, keep your head down. And so now that I am in this sort of front facing position, I'm on a stage, I'm loud about things that are true for me. First of all, I don't think it's an accident that I do that work because I think that my response, not in a rebellious way, but just in a sort of like reaction way to growing up how I did, which was with parents who were afraid because their parents survived, which all makes sense. I I mean, I used to say this that like, I hid or sorry, that my grandparents hid so that I didn't have to. It's a little more complicated now because now there's more overt anti-Semitism, which to me means there's more of a reason for Israel. Not that I needed a reason for Israel. Um, so in terms of being loud and out, the fear that goes with that, I think, is a little more complicated.
A couple of thoughts on what you've said so far. You do have a character in which you play up the stereotypes that you were just talking about. I just saw a clip
Oh
with
yeah,
the character Rabbi Cheryl, I think is your name there,
Rabbi
and
Shelley, which was, yeah, for
Shelley,
Jay
yes.
Sketch. Yeah.
exactly, Rabbi Shelley, thank you, and your catchphrase essentially is "Tikkun Olam" with
Yes.
your guitar, of course, and so you're obviously laughing at the entire field of, progressive female rabbis and all the stereotypes that there are there. But yeah, this is the time in terms of the people of Judaism, this is the time in which we do wonder here in Israel if that stereotypical female guitar playing rabbi is an ally at this point.
Right. Yeah, and to be very clear, like that stereotypical character, the Rabbi Shelley is not based on my wife, like in terms of like what she looks like or believes or anything. It's a total character. Um, and yeah, like so. First of all, I didn't write that character. I played that character. That character was written by Ami Kozak and Dovi Newberger as part of J Sketch, which also I think was also written by Ellie Leibovitz and Mikey Greenblatt. I don't know exactly how the writing credits are parsed out, but I know that I am not one of the writers, but I performed that character, and that character is like very much a character, but also I know that character. Like I know people who fall into that character as real people.
For sure. And as you said, anyone who has eyes and is being exposed at all to, pride culture would recognize you as a lesbian. And I think anyone who has eyes and has been exposed to Jewish culture would expect that you are a Jew as well. And you're not only performing to Jews, you're also performing obviously to mixed crowds at the very least, and if not, entirely non-Jews. And so I wonder if at this point in this post October 7th world, are you modifying your set in a way that you perhaps wouldn't have previously?
I don't think so. I think that the only way it was modified at all, like, so my joke that speaks to the Israel Hamas conflict specifically was a joke that I mean I wouldn't say that that's modifying the set. That's basically my like the reason that I thought about that joke was number one because of events that took place that made up the joke, but also because I noticed that post October 7th there was this kind of like tension and silence if I talked about anything being Jewish. So it was more like similar to me talking about being gay. Like I sort of felt there was a need. And so then I wrote to that need in the set. So I guess that's modifying, but I take modification to be a little bit of a different meaning, which is like, okay, do I need to like announce something or take away a joke or something like that? And I don't know that that's exactly true. Um, but yeah, like I think what I try to do is like notice what is needed in a room and then address it. Now, the other thing is that I think it's also an opportunity for me um this upcoming tour, but also a world in which people are going to like assume one way or the other about me is to address other elements of my life and personality that have nothing to do with this. And so like just an example, like for this upcoming tour, I know a lot of people who live in Israel. Some of those people are people I knew from growing up. I went to Orthodox day school. Some of those people have made Aliyah. And those people have heard about this tour and reach out to me. And they're like, oh my God, me and 16 of my friends and families in our neighborhood are coming to the show. And
Because,
so,
just
mhm,
to interrupt, you didn't
yeah.
only go to Orthodox day school, but you went to Ramaz, right? Which is just this amazing flagship program of course, modern Orthodoxy, but so many make Aliyah from Ramaz. So,
That's
yeah.
true. Although I do think that these were people from Mariah, which was where I went for elementary school. Much less of a flagship, but a great school. And it's in New Jersey. So anyway, but yes, totally. I did go to Ramaz, and I don't doubt that people from Ramaz will be in audiences, whether or not they've told me in advance. And so, but part of that, like I do comedy. I'm very scatterbrained. And so, for better or worse, and I think in this career it is for better, a lot of what comes to me to put together for a set is like what occurs to me as I'm like thinking about like, oh, this show, whatever. And so because some of those people have reached out, I'm like, oh my God, what about that story that I haven't thought about in so many years because I haven't been in touch with Debbie, And so I've been thinking as I'm working through like, okay, what do I put in this set? It's not modifying, it's more speaking to the moment that I'm putting together this set and thinking about like, I don't know, I mean, it's got to be pretty rough to live in Israel right now. I don't doubt that. And so yeah, I definitely want to announce to everybody like I love you and I am so happy that you're here. To the extent that I'm allaying their concerns about whatever they might assume my opinions are, sure. And I guess that qualifies to some degree as a modification, but also it's an opportunity for me to think about like what can I talk about that would allow them to laugh about something that we connect about that's not political. Like it's a comedy show. And so, if I'm talking about this story from third grade, that I'm like, that's actually really funny for me to say. And it occurs to me because I know the person in that story is going to be in the audience at one of these shows, but also like it's a story that definitely could be said on stage in general. What a great opportunity to bring it out. So that's, I think, more how I'm thinking of things.
Okay, we're going to talk more after the break.
3 million Israelis are dealing with trauma since October 7th. To help Israelis heal, Hadassah is there, with the largest rehabilitation center in Jerusalem, world-renowned medical centers, and youth villages. It's said, saving a life saves the world. Imagine helping millions. This is Hadassah, a life-changing force in Israel and the world.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with Liz Glazer. Liz, I don't assume that you're any kind of listener of my podcast, but regular listeners know that I have 7 children. And I'm also always fascinated to hear how becoming a parent has changed a person or influenced them in any kind of way. So you said your daughter is 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's your only child so far?
Mm-hmm.
So how would you define any kind of changes you've seen in yourself or perhaps even in your humor since she's been
Yeah.
born?
Sure. I mean, well, I noticed the change in myself that she is, just the best to me. I think that's the real element of being a parent that like you're just reoriented in terms of your focus in the world. It's not surprising to me, but I guess like there's no way to anticipate the feeling of that. And in terms of my humor, I mean, I talk about parenthood quite a bit. So I guess that's different, but like, you know, the thing that I'm working on a specific chunk of comedy. Like I have like jokes, but I'm like, okay, what is this really about in terms of parenthood? I mean, it's such anxiety. And I talk about anxiety a lot in my comedy and in my life because I feel it all the time. Never have, and honestly, I never won't. That I've come to accept. But I feel like the role of being a parent is being anxious all the time because it's like the second that you have a kid, it's like I don't know if they have. Do you have in Israel like this idea that babies have to be doing tummy time? Do you know
Oh,
about
of
tummy?
course.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, because I don't know, like, to the extent that something is or isn't like general accepted parenthood, whatever. Okay, so tummy time, I don't know about anybody's kids, if you're listening. To me, it felt like watching babies like on the internet do tummy time for allegedly extended periods of time happily was so maddening for me because I would put my daughter on her stomach 10 seconds, if that, crying, bawling. This is the worst thing ever. And then you look online and it's like, listen, if your kid can't do tummy time for like a day straight, then she's never going to be able to roll over. And that means that you're going to have her fastened in the bassinet, until she's in college. And her marital bed is going to be a snoo or whatever. And so because every decision that one makes as a parent has this added level of anxiety where it's like, listen, and if you don't do this now, it's going to be the reason that her whole life is ruined. And by the way, it's because of you. And I think that element of it was new because I always was anxious for myself, and I would, think about I don't know if my anxiety has always been directed at other people, meaning like I never cared if anything happened to me. I always only cared about if anything happened, God forbid, to somebody I knew. And so it's like times I don't even know that there's an exponent, there would be that equivalent in terms of like when I have a kid.
That's so interesting, and I do wonder if it has to do with your roots because I would say
Sure.
of the 2 of us, my husband is that person,
Ah,
and I'm much more, "Okay, things I can't control, I'm not going to worry about." I have children in the Army, 3 fighters right now, and when they're in dangerous places, which they are, for me, I just try to things I can't control, I don't worry about, and my husband is like,
yeah,
right,
totally.
so it's a personal,
Right.
but I have to say, with all the children, the one huge guilt that I always, was feeling was breastfeeding, and I just felt like I did breastfeed all the children, even when I had twins, they were only breastfed, blah, 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 and then I look at it in, retrospect, and it's like, what the heck? What was this narrative that I was telling myself that they could only survive from me? I mean, what?
Right.
Why? Why do that
Right.
to yourself? Really?
But interestingly, that was something you could control. And so perhaps in light of what you said, that was maybe, the root of like, okay, well, I can control this.
Yep. Exactly. You're right. And so you're a therapist and a lawyer
Aha!
and a stand-up
That's my
comedian? What?
next character is playing a therapist.
Nice.
I've always
Nice.
wanted to.
Sure,
Yeah.
you can do it. Yeah,
Thank
100%.
you, Amanda.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm validating you,
Yes.
not just your parking. And I do wonder as well, you're talking about the anxiety of having a child, but for me, I have 7 kids, but the
It's amazing.
youngest, he's
Yeah.
4, and then the
Okay.
next one up is 13, and then I
Mhm.
had 6 in 8 years, so it was kind of a
Wow.
crazy situation. And
Sure.
so now I'm looking at this little guy, he's 4, and he's kind of on his own because the rest of them are so much older,
Yeah.
and he is just so freaking funny, he's
Yes.
just a joy to just observe, observational comedy. You need nothing more than this little guy. And are you seeing that as well?
100%. So my daughter, the things that I think are emerging, first of all, she loves to laugh. Just, really crack up and it's amazing. And everything is a game, so that's inherently, there's a fun element to that. In terms of like her specific sense of humor, it seems to be very literal, which I really appreciate. And the 2 examples I have, so one is where I guess they were painting something at school, and her teacher said that she was asking around the room. There were 3 of them there. What are you painting? And so one of the kids says, "Oh, I'm painting a dinosaur." The other kid says, "Oh, I'm painting hearts." And then my when asked, "What are you painting?" She's like, "I'm painting paper." And so I was like, "That's amazing. That's so funny. That's so simple." And then the other one was that I guess the teacher was saying, oh, she's really good at, figuring out shapes. Like, for example, she'll look at a circle and say it's a circle. She'll look at a triangle and say triangle. And then she'll look at a rectangle and she'll say phone. And so I appreciate that, she just tells it how she sees it. And there's no filter, which I think is the reason that we say that kids are as funny as we say that they are, is because there is no filter. And my hope for her, I mean, among, of course, I mean, I'm a parent hoping for my child. I hope the world and health and happiness and prosperity. It's, I mean, ad mea vesrim and, all of that stuff. And I hope that she continues to have the kind of self-assurance and unfilteredness to carry that with her, forever. Because for me, I mean, I had this career in law, and that's fine. For me, it was fine. I mean, it's great. We need lawyers. Great. And if that's something that somebody's really into, then great. But I think for me specifically, it was very much a situation where I was sort of reined in, personality wise, and then figured out how to like kind of be somebody who could put their nose to the grindstone and study and figure that out until ultimately I was like, I don't want to do this. I just want to be the way that I was before I ever started filtering. And that's I think why I think my daughter's funny. And it's also like ultimately why I think my daughter is an inspiration comedically. Because it's like, yeah, just say it.
I love that, and we're going to end on that, and anyone here in Israel, you are definitely encouraged to attend this Comedy for Koby tour. It's always great, and it's for a really good cause as well, and so we'll have the tour dates in our program notes, and Liz, I thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you so much, Amanda. It was really, really lovely to be here and to meet you and to be on this podcast.
Great, and I hope to meet you in person while
The
you're here.
same. Yes.
Great. So thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's What Matters Now, and I think everything we talked about mattered now, so we're good, I think.
Yep. Matters the most.
Exactly. We were produced by the Padres. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until next week. Shalom.